Nobody had been charged with the crime. Actually, one person was charged with the crime that entire day. So one random person was allegedly committing some sort of crime, and this resulted in all of the children that were there being taken from all the parents that had participated in the protests, being locked in a room where the parents could not see what was happening to them, and the police pushing the parents out even further away to do God knows what to those children. Now let me ask you this. Have you seen this covered on the news? Because I sure haven't. All right, we're good to go. Let's start the segment. So, for those of you who don't know, probably most of you do, but these segments where we talk about current events and important issues and such, I do end up eventually kind of editing them up just a little bit and putting them on YouTube. So they're always available there. So if you want to check out the backlog of stuff that we've talked about, or if you ever miss a discussion that you want to check in on, feel free to go to YouTube. I'm Arcane Aria over there. And of course, I talk about lots of these things on Twitch. So I'm Arcane Aria 2, the number 2 on Twitch. And if you support my work, please consider supporting me on Patreon or giving a one-time donation by going to buymeacoffee.com. Now, that said, let's talk about Missouri. TikTok, yeah, I'm on TikTok, believe it or not, Bailguitari. I don't know if you knew that. So, in case you don't know, Missouri has been one of the most aggressive states in passing, or in taking actions against, rather, the gender nonconforming community lately. Lots of states have. Countless states have introduced all kinds of horrible anti-trans legislation. I said Twitch. Oh, thank you. I meant TikTok. You're right. I am Arcane Aria 2 on TikTok, not on Twitch. Yeah, that's how most people find me, thankfully, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm glad that people follow me on other platforms too, so that we can do all kinds of different other content together. And since we have kind of a gang here, just in case y'all don't know, there is a community Discord. So DM me if you would like to join the community Discord. But we're talking about Missouri. So Missouri introduced a whole slew of trans legislation. It's kind of hard to pass legislation in most state legislatures. It is in Missouri. They have a limited amount of time in their legislative session. And so in response, the Attorney General in Missouri, Andrew Bailey, if I'm recalling correctly, decided just all on his own to issue an emergency rule, effectively making it impossible for people to access gender-affirming care in the state regardless of age. And there was a little bit of time before it took into effect. Essentially, once that rule goes into effect, it would make it so that it would become prohibitively difficult to access gender-affirming care if you are not already receiving it. Now, the good news about that is that Planned Parenthood in Missouri is currently prioritizing new appointments for HRT. So if you're a transgender individual in the state of Missouri, call your local Planned Parenthood affiliate right now and schedule an appointment, and they'll get you set up. That's very important because then you can get grandfathered in. Yes, thank you, AP. Thank you very much. Fortunately, the courts have intervened in that ruling. So, as we can see here, judge puts Missouri rule limiting transgender care on hold. A Missouri judge on Wednesday temporarily halted enforcement of a first-of-its-kind rule that restricts access to gender-affirming care for transgender kids and adults just hours before it was set to take effect. If you remember, we actually discussed this when it happened, and we were talking about how ACLU and other organizations were already planning to file suit, or at least it seemed like they were gearing up towards doing that. And the courts are already taking action. The rule instated by Republican Attorney General Andrew Bailey places requirements on both minors and adults before they would be allowed to receive gender-affirming treatments, such as puberty blockers or hormones. It was set to take effect Thursday, but transgender Missourians and healthcare providers sued to stop it from being enforced. St. Louis County Circuit Judge Ellen Ribodo, I'm probably saying that wrong, said Wednesday that she would like more time to review the matter before deciding whether to issue a temporary restraining order. She delayed the implementation of the rule until 5 p.m. Monday. Saying that she anticipates she will issue a ruling before then. So this was yesterday, 5 p.m. Monday. So they're saying they're going to rule on May 1st, I guess. So at least for now, the rule has not taken effect. Despite that, I won't shed many tears if TikTok is banned. Well, I will, because TikTok's a major platform for me, but I understand your sentiment. Bailey has touted the rule as a way to shield minors from what he describes as experimental medical treatments, though puberty blockers and sex hormones have been prescribed for decades. And yeah, so if you read the rule that Bailey put forth, the experimental treatments that it is describing is giving prescriptions off-label. Prescriptions are given off-label literally all the time. I have prescriptions right behind me here. You can see them on the table. Some of those are off-label. One of those is trazodone, which I use to sleep. Literally millions and millions of Americans have been using a small dose of trazodone to help them sleep at night for years and years and years, and it's an off-label usage. Off-label usage of prescriptions is entirely normal. There's nothing experimental about it. And Bailey is claiming that this is to protect trans kids, or to protect kids, rather. And yet, despite that, it makes it prohibitively difficult for adults to access that gender-affirming care. So, absolutely insane. Attorney Tony Rothert with the American Civil Liberties Union of Missouri told Rebodo at a court hearing Wednesday that the regulations will cause immediate, severe, and potentially irreparable harm for people who could lose access to medications that include puberty blockers and sex hormones. That's true. He and other attorneys said that transgender people who can't get gender-affirming care are at risk of suicide. That's also true. And of course, as we know, that's the intent of these bills. These bills are to make life so intolerable for gender-affirming, or for gender non-conforming, rather, people in the state of Missouri that they either leave the state or they succumb to the symptoms that come with untreated gender dysphoria and, for lack of a better term, commit roadblocks. That's what they're looking for. Assistant Attorney General Joshua Devine argued that Bailey's order does not ban gender-affirming care, and while that is technically true, it makes it so prohibitively difficult, there are so many hoops to jump through, that virtually nobody would be able to access it on any sort of reasonable timetable. The rule required people to have experienced a, quote, intense pattern of documented gender dysphoria for 3 years and to have received at least 15 hourly sessions with a therapist over at least 18 months before receiving puberty blockers, hormones, surgery, or other treatment. Patients also must first be screened for autism and social media addiction and any psychiatric symptoms from mental health issues that would have to be treated or resolved. Well, kind of interesting. So autism is not something that can be resolved, right? That is something that you have for your entire life. And 3 years is a long time to live with symptoms that increase your depression, your anxiety, and your suicidal ideation. Many people will not survive those 3 years. As far as the therapy sessions go, hey, that's a great idea. If you are considering transitioning, going to therapy is actually a really good idea. I highly recommend it. If you are in a state where you're not worried about having access to hormones in the future, maybe doing some therapy beforehand isn't a bad idea, but it doesn't need to be a requirement for adults. The informed consent model has worked for ages. There's nothing wrong with it. Some people would be able to maintain their prescriptions while undergoing required assessments. Devine said, which is why you need to get in there now. Call your local Planned Parenthood affiliate and they will hook you up. Devine said the rule provides basic procedural guardrails. He cited studies showing that a high percentage of kids seeking to transition are dealing with mental health issues. He said that rather than transition, they should undergo talk therapy. And while it is true that oftentimes transgender people are also dealing with other mental health issues, oftentimes the reasons for that is because they have untreated gender dysphoria. So ensuring that they do not have that gender dysphoria treated is just making it all that much harder for them to, quote, overcome their health issues. And the idea that autistic people would not be allowed to transition at all is literally insane and genocidal against trans people. So this is not just a step towards genocide against the gender nonconforming community. This is a step towards genocide against the autistic community as well. Those suing argue Bailey sidestepped the GOP-led legislature and acted beyond his authority. And that's the truth. So the laws that he is using to implement this rule are meant to regulate commerce, not to regulate medical care, especially medical care that people are already receiving. We don't allow attorney generals to legislate, and we don't allow them to play doctor, Robert Rothert said. Emily Wales, president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Great Plains, said that with the delay, transgender and non-binary Missourians will still be able to receive treatment on Thursday. And while this is a temporary relief, our patients always deserve the highest standard of care without the intervention of politicians who have no grasp of medicine. A spokesperson for Bailey said the office will continue fighting for all patients who have access to adequate health care. What a crock of shit. Bailey issued the restrictions following an investigation he launched in February into the Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital. The investigation was prompted by a former employee who alleged the center was providing children with gender-affirming care without informed consent, not enough individualized case review, and wraparound mental health services. An internal review by the university found no misconduct and determined that the former employee's claims were unsubstantiated. In fact, if this is the story that I'm thinking of, oh, who was this? Oh, they're not going to say who this is, but whatever. The point is, it all will end up being a lot of bullshit. We have a video on YouTube discussing quote-unquote whistleblower claims about gender clinics and how bullshit they are, how they don't even have the ability to know the things they're claiming are going on. So this is all insane. Just further attempts to marginalize the trans community and drive us out of existence, drive us out of the state, and drive us into suicide ultimately. It's an attempt at genocide. And Missouri is not the only state that's doing this. Many states have introduced bills that would accomplish essentially the same thing. Texas has a bill introduced that would ban gender-affirming care for adults up to age, I want to say 26. Just literally countless states are passing these bills. There is a coordinated effort. There was recently leaked emails that revealed a coordinated effort between Christo-fascist legal organizations like Alliance Defending Freedom, Republican lawmakers, and like TERF organizations to craft all of these bills together as a group with the same intent, the same language, introduce them all at once in all of these different states in order to have the desired effect of marginalizing the trans community and putting us in extreme danger. And that's exactly what's going on. So that's what we're fighting for, right? And the trans community is fighting back, as is the average citizen. So the average citizen is seeing these things going on, and they see how insane they are. There was a poll done recently in a very conservative state. I can't recall which one. They polled likely Republican voters and asked them what they thought of these anti-trans bills. And something like 60% of them were opposed to that. So 60% of likely Republican voters were opposed to these bills. So there's already a lot of backlash going on. And it has the right wing scared. And what does the right wing do when they're scared? Well, they try to silence their critics by using fascistic tactics. Let's take a look at that. Of course, the fascist in chief here in the United States right now is Ron DeSantis. And the Florida legislature recently used their security forces to kidnap a bunch of trans kids in retaliation for protests. On Wednesday, a TikTok video was shared on Twitter which showed parents separated from their children while at the Florida legislature. In the video, which is a recorded version of a TikTok live by user Kyle, Banana Bread Muffin, people can be heard chanting, "Let them go," and "kidnappers." It is explained in the video that the children were being held behind the door of the House of the Representatives gallery. So that original video is no longer available, but that's okay because we have it. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the face of fascism in America, folks.
The youngest one is like 12, and the youngest one 12.
So this is actually the chamber of the legislature where citizens are allowed to be there by law in Florida. And Capitol Security have separated the children of adults so there are adults that were participating in a protest against a bill in Florida that would have allowed the state to take the children away from them if they helped their children transition. So what did the security in the Capitol do? Well, they decided to just go ahead and separate the children without the law being passed, in retaliation for the protest occurring.
The parents are here. They're withholding them from the parents illegally.
How's the sound? Parents are literally begging for them to let their children go.
So where we are right now is actually the gallery of the House of Representatives in the Florida State Capitol. So if you go in through these doors, it's actually the gallery where we're allowed to be as citizens.
And you can see legislators just walking by like it's no big deal.
Parents are here. There's one of them. Parents are here. There's another guardian. There you go. I believe the youngest one is.
And in the state of Florida, when a child is being detained, parents are required to be part of that process if they want to be.
If you are in a red state, if you are in any state that is implementing these kind of laws.
Pretty disturbing stuff, but it doesn't stop there.
What is your name and badge number, please? What is it?
Is your child in here?
You're fucking fascist! You're fucking fascist! You're fucking fascist!
I'm glad to see the parents at least trying to fight back with their words. But it may be time for us to fight back with more than our words.
Let the parents in! 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 Why can we go in there? Fucking fascist!
Someone you can see, why aren't you letting the parents go in? Just asking. And the police are just pushing them out.
Let the parents in! Let the parents in! Let the parents in! Let the parents.
So I've been in this building before. So the chamber is actually like, basically the camera is pointing in the general direction of where the chamber is. And so at this point, the parents have been pushed back away from where they are holding the children.
Let the parents in! 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 Yeah, but this is abuse. I'm just trying to answer a question.
You're going to get arrested.
You are legally required to have the parents involved in this process, so let them in. You are legally required. They are minors. Let them go.
I mean, you can see that you can hear the horror and outrage and shock in their voice because nothing that happened was illegal. Nobody had been charged with a crime. Actually, one person was charged with a crime that entire day. So one random person was allegedly committing some sort of crime, and this resulted in all of the children that were there being taken from all the parents that had participated in the protests, being locked in a room where the parents could not see what was happening to them, and the police pushing the parents out even further away to do God knows what to those children. Now let me ask you this. Have you seen this covered on the news? Because I sure haven't. The only place that I've seen this covered is in TikTok, right? I just see people put like random activists posting videos on the ground on TikTok and other platforms talking about what's going on. And of course, the Republicans have introduced a federal act to ban TikTok, and one has to wonder if the reason this is happening, the reason they're trying to ban TikTok, is because it's a very efficient means of sharing this sort of information. All the time there are these big mass movements where governments and other organizations are oppressing the protesters, and information is spread very rapidly about the situation on TikTok. And one has to wonder if that is the reason why they are pushing so hard to get rid of it. You would show sympathetic tears? Yeah, I when I first saw this, I did my fair share of crying as well. You only see TikTok coverage of this, exactly. You're right. There has been no mainstream media coverage of it. In fact, this Pink News article is literally the only article that I've been able to find that goes into what happened in any sort of substance. So not only is the state acting to intimidate protesters, to silence dissent of parents who are concerned about their children getting taken away, but on top of that, the media is covering it up. And the GOP is introducing bills that would make it impossible for people to share this information on TikTok. Happy Puritan, I don't know what happened with the link. I'm sorry about that. I added a whole bunch of stuff to my stream lately, and some of it I'm still trying to get reined in. So we have reasons to fight, and the reasons that we have to fight is because they're trying to genocide us. And in result, they're taking fascist. I have a hard time saying that word. Let's just say they're taking goose stepper actions to silence protesters, to stop protests, to silence dissent, to intimidate people by taking their children away from them, making them feel unsafe, using the police, using their jackbooted thugs to do their thuggery. But it doesn't just stop there. So not only are they trying to silence everyday citizens, they're trying to silence elected officials who are doing the same thing. I don't think people want to ban TikTok because it's a useful news source, but maybe because I see TikTok as a misinfo factory. So every platform is a misinfo factory. So I suppose you're right about that. But I definitely think that when the federal government is trying to ban an effective means of spreading information by the average citizen, then there's a pretty good chance that that's the reason why. Personally, I think it's TikTok's Chinese origin. Well, that's the justification that's being used. But that's an insane justification because TikTok in the United States is not actually run by a Chinese company. It's run by an American company. I mean, there are security concerns, so I can understand banning TikTok from government devices. But now they're introducing legislation that would ban TikTok entirely. And I don't see any connection to China justifying that whatsoever. That's just xenophobic nonsense that's being used to make it impossible to fight back, make it harder to fight back. But they're not just trying to silence average Joes like you and me who are out there, average Joes and Janes, fighting for our rights and for our community. They're also silencing elected officials. So most of us by now know about the two Justins, right? Justin Jones and Justin Parsons, who were expelled from the Tennessee legislature for participating in a peaceful, nonviolent protest. But that's not the only ones who have had that happen to them. Recently, and we're not going to watch this whole video.
I want a mayor who's focused on our families.
Oh my God,
and
Lyrian
community.
Bear, shut the fuck
That's
up.
Mayor Lyrian Gaylor
So
Bear.
Side note, our Democratic mayor here in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I'm from, she's a real
Suzanne
progressive
Geist.
motherfucker.
For Geist, her extreme
She
position on
decided that
abortion
during
comes
the
first.
peaceful nonviolent
Suzanne
protest
Geist
over George
is just
Floyd's
too
murder
extreme
to
for us.
institute a curfew at the behest of the police union that essentially gave them carte blanche, blank check ability to just go and fuck up some protesters. And that's exactly what they did. In fact, they nearly killed people. And our Democratic mayor gave them the ability to do so.
Just banned one of their state's elected representatives for...
I don't know why there's no sound coming from here. I muted this, but what's going on here?
defending trans rights. Zoe Zafir...
The page.
The Montana House Republicans just...
What the fuck? Why is this happening? Oh, I know why. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Maybe it's xenophobic, but it's still owned by a Chinese company, and thus I'm no fan. Okay, but how does that justify banning the application so that people can't use it for free speech purposes?
Banned one of their state's elected...
So this is Zoe Zephyr, a state representative, the first trans state representative actually in Montana, and she was recently banned from the legislature. So let's learn a little bit about that.
Representatives for defending trans rights. Zoe Zafir is Montana's first trans woman elected to the House of Representatives, and last week she spoke out against a frankly ridiculous anti-trans bill.
If you disallow the use of
a real
the
hero.
medical care that is accepted by every major medical association, if you disallow that care and don't allow people to have access to that, the only therapy left is either A, meaningless, or B, conversion therapy, which is torture. I also want to point out, again, gender-affirming care is not Orwellian newspeak, as it says in this letter. It is accepted by every major medical association. I will also say what I said down in committee earlier. This bill tries to define male and female as binary. You could not legislate binary sex any more than you could legislate that the earth is flat. Intersex people exist, trans people exist, and this bill doesn't change that. Lastly, I would say that there were conversations at the end of this, at the very end of the bill, the letter that says life-altering medical procedures should wait until they are adults. What I will say is if you are, by this bill and by what these amendments do, if you are forcing a trans child to go through puberty when they are trans, that is tantamount to torture. If you vote yes on this bill, and yes on these amendments, I hope the next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see the blood on your hands.
Precisely.
That was such a powerful statement on the harm that would directly result from passing this bill. But apparently those facts hurt some Republican feelings, because after this debate, the Montana Freedom Caucus called for her censure in a letter where they clutched their pearls, demanding civility and respect, all while they misgender her several times. When legislators met again on Thursday, Speaker of the House Matt Regier refused to allow her to speak on any bill, silencing her and
the censure had not yet been passed yet. She had not been formally censured, the process hadn't been followed, and they just railroaded her and prevented her from being able to speak.
the 11,000 constituents she was elected to represent. Word of this spread fast, and people on all sides of this issue were not okay with this direct denial of democracy. And on Monday, when lawmakers met again, the citizens of Montana showed the fuck up, delivering a petition with over
Look at this.
3,000
That's
signatures,
beautiful.
followed by a protest on the Capitol steps where they displayed banners reading, "Democracy dies here."
Look at all these beautiful humans acting the fuck up to defend our community.
And in the following debate, when another anti-trans bill came up, and Regier again refused to allow Zoe Zafir to speak,
No representative is above our House rules. Our House rules apply to all. 100 representatives will take this to the board. Ruling as Speaker has been upheld.
So her citizens, her constituents are demanding to let her speak, and they're just ignoring it.
citizens in the House gallery began chanting,
Which is very reminiscent of when the Justins were effectively on trial were reinstated rather as legislators by the counties, I believe it was, that they came from. I guess the counties can just reinstate them as legislators, which is pretty cool. And when they were reinstated and people were cheering and excited, the speaker or whatever it is in that legislative body was banging his gavel like, "Shut the fuck up!" Making himself look like a total asshole. Unfortunately, I suspect this is what the majority of Montanans support given the legislative makeup, so I doubt there will be a positive end to this. Well, as we discussed earlier, though, a lot of the polls and a lot of just general information and what you can see out there indicates that even most Republicans don't support this really extreme action that's being taken against the transgender community. And I know Montana is particularly conservative. You may be right. But I think that you're underestimating the pushback that these people are creating and the massive platforms that they're giving the people that they're banning and censuring. They're making this national news. So what's being done to average citizens, as we discussed earlier, is not really making it onto the news. But what's happening to elected officials is, and it's showing exactly how dark and how evil these fascists are, and showing them for who they truly are on the national stage. And I don't think it's going to go well for them at all.
"Let her speak."
And look, they're just leaving. They don't even want to hear them.
The representatives were told to clear the floor, and as they did, Zafir stood and
Riot
raised
police
her
clearing them
microphone
out.
in solidarity, a truly powerful display as riot police were dragging citizens out and arresting them. She stepped out and gave this comment.
What you heard today is people standing for democracy. People standing to let their voices be heard. And what you're watching here is you're watching people who do not want to see democracy in action.
So just to recap, her constituents were asking that she be allowed to speak. Their response was to send riot police to go in there, beat the hell out of them, and drag them away. I don't know what word you can use for this other than fascism. But hey, it doesn't stop there. That's the phrase of the day. The phrase of the day is it doesn't stop there. Let me move my camera again. I'm getting excited. I'm sorry, folks. She's not the only one. So a non-binary legislator in Oklahoma was recently censured for similar reasons. And the latest casualty in the fascist drive to attack their political opponents, especially the political opponents that are currently in office, is our very own Senator Megan Hunt. Senator Megan Hunt has been spearheading efforts to prevent anti-trans legislation from passing in Nebraska, and now conflict of interest complaint against Senator Hunt for supporting trans rights. A formal complaint has been issued against her for a conflict of interest. Let's see what that conflict of interest is. Dear friends and neighbors, today I was informed by the Nebraska Accountability and Disclosure Commission that because of a complaint filed by David Begley, I am under official investigation for a conflict of interest for having a trans child and voting against LB 574. My colleagues stood up offering me their kind words in disapproval of this complaint. I don't need their words, I need their vote. My child needs their vote. Children and families from across our state need their vote. Words are meaningless unless you put action behind them. I will continue to advocate for our children, yours, theirs, and mine, no matter what harassment or intimidation comes their way. This is from Megan Hunt's website, meganfornebraska.com. You can read the full complaint here if you would like to, but basically what it boils down to is they are saying that Megan Hunt has a conflict of interest in speaking on these trans bills because she has a trans child. That's it. So if you have a trans child, these fascists will weaponize it against you so that you cannot speak out against these bills. So to be clear, what's happening right now is several state governments are attempting to genocide the trans community. And in response, they are sending their jackbooted thugs, their cops, their riot police, their Capitol Security, other agencies, God knows who else, to use violent force to remove any dissent, to silence any protest, any outrage against this genocide. There's a genocide going on and it's being covered up. That's the reality of the America that we live in. Let me catch up on comments. Maybe it could lead to a blue governor. I believe Montana's had blue governors before, so it's a possibility. Yeah, it may have the support of the legislature, but the legislature is full of absolutely insane people, and that does not represent the average citizen. Something democracy. Oh, hold up. Something democracy versus liberalism and the problems of pure democracy. I don't know about that. Inane people who the citizens put in. Yeah, so people put in some bad politicians, not realizing how bad they are. People in general just do their best to vote for the right folks. Unfortunately, that means they end up voting in a lot of neoliberals and a lot of extreme far-right folks that do some really bad things. And right now, those people are exposing themselves for who they really are. And their constituents are seeing that the people they've elected are fascists. And a lot of people are not likely to elect fascists again. But the takeaway from all of this is really simple. We're experiencing the rise of genocidal fascism in America. That's what it comes down to. In Germany, in the 1930s, the scapegoat, the target of the violence was the Jews and others. And now in the United States, it's the gender nonconforming community. They are taking actions to cover up their genocide using state agents to batter, bruise, and remove any voices of dissent. And they are taking extra legal actions to silence any people with actual political power from being able to utilize that political power against them. That's what's going on. How does that make you feel? How does it make you feel to see this happening in your country right now? Is this what you expected to see in your lifetime? I suppose for some of us it is. It's not for me. For me, seeing the emergence of this sort of thing a few years ago was pretty disturbing, pretty earth-shattering. And seeing it on full display like this is incredibly disturbing. But that's it. That's all I got. Again, if you support my work rather, please consider going to Patreon and becoming a subscriber. You can also go to Buy Me a Coffee and give me a one-time donation. Let's play some more Halo.